There is a kind of presence that fills a room before a word is spoken. It's not loud, it's not dramatic. It doesn't rely on cleverness or beauty. It's the gravity of someone who has trained their inner world so deeply that their very stillness becomes a force. That is silent attraction. We're taught to chase attention, to be louder, funnier, more visible. But what if the real magnetism lies in restraint? What if the quietest person in the room often holds the most weight? Marcus Aurelius once reminded himself, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." So what does that mean for the person who walks in grounded, composed, and inwardly peaceful? People don't consciously notice the details, but they feel them. The way someone breathes, the way they pause before speaking, the way they choose silence over noise, all of it speaks, even louder than words. Silent attractiveness begins with self-possession, not performance, not pretense, but a true command of your energy. Imagine walking into a room and not needing to do anything to be noticed, because the way you carry your stillness speaks volumes. That's not charisma in the traditional sense. That's earned presence. Have you ever met someone who didn't rush to fill silences? Who looked at you, not through you? Who didn't seem to be performing, but simply was? That is the beginning of the 12 socially magnetic habits that form the art of silent attraction. This chapter begins with the root of them all, composure. In a world of frantic reactions, composure is rebellion. It's choosing response over reactivity. Composure is the trait that lets people know you are not easily moved. And in a world where everyone is pulled in 1,000 directions, that calm center becomes magnetic. The Stoics understood this. They practiced it. Epictetus taught that if someone speaks ill of you rather than trying to defend yourself, say, "He obviously doesn't know me very well since there are so many other faults he could have mentioned." This is not passive. It's powerful detachment. You own yourself. You don't need to be seen a certain way. You simply are. This quiet confidence, this lack of performance, becomes its own kind of flame. It doesn't burn for attention, but people gather around it. They sense the rare warmth of someone who isn't looking outward for validation. Think of composure as the still water beneath a surface storm. Everyone else is being tossed around by the wind. You are grounded in something deeper. But how do we develop composure? It begins with intentional observation. Before responding, breathe. When emotion rises, become curious about it rather than enslaved by it. Composure is not the absence of feeling. It's the mastery of it. Like a captain steering through fog, you slow down, adjust course, and guide rather than crash. Every day offers 100 chances to practice. When someone cuts you off in traffic, when someone ignores your message, when silence stretches in a conversation, these are all invitations to not react, to remain rooted. And people notice that. Without knowing why, they feel safe around someone who isn't volatile, who doesn't flinch, who doesn't need to dominate a room, because they've already conquered themselves. That's the first habit of silent attraction, the energy of inner stillness. And once that presence is felt, something strange happens. You speak less but are heard more. You act less but are noticed more. You need less but attract more. Not because you're manipulating, but because your presence is clean. And in a world of desperation, neediness, and noise, clean energy is a rare and irresistible currency. There's no shortcut to composure. It's not taught in charm schools. It's forged in solitude, refined in discomfort, and expressed in the way you carry yourself without needing anyone to approve. That's the root. And from that root, the other 11 habits grow. Now, let's explore what comes next. The mysterious allure of noticing everything while revealing nothing. There is an old power in those who observe more than they speak. In conversations, their eyes are awake. They catch subtle glances, tones, and shifts in energy that others miss, and yet they do not rush to reveal their thoughts. That restraint creates mystique. Mystique is not mystery for the sake of ego. It is the natural result of inward richness. When your mind is full and your heart is calm, You don't feel the need to spill everything out. You become selective, not secretive but sacred with your energy. Epictetus advised, be silent for the most part, or speak only when necessary and briefly. This wasn't about being antisocial, it was about clarity. Those who observe deeply understand that not every thought deserves expression, not every silence must be broken, and in that discernment, power is born. This second habit is built around observation, sharpening your awareness while remaining unreadable. When someone doesn't know what you're thinking, they lean in. They become curious. The mind, confronted with ambiguity, tries to solve the puzzle. That's the effect of someone who listens well, speaks deliberately, and doesn't immediately show their emotional cards. But observation is not a performance. It's a practice of presence. Watch without judgment. Listen without planning your reply. Absorb the room. Understand the emotional temperature. You don't need to act on every detail, but you hold them, and that holding becomes a kind of silent intelligence. Imagine being at a gathering. Some talk to be heard. Others listen to understand. The silent, attractive person, though, listens to the space between words. They notice body language, the nervous habits, the inconsistencies between what is said and what is meant, and they hold that awareness without exposing it. This creates a quiet advantage in any social dynamic, not for manipulation, but for wisdom. You choose how to respond. You're not reacting impulsively. You're crafting your presence deliberately. Now, you might ask, doesn't that come off as cold? Not if it's rooted in presence and warmth. The key is soft eyes and steady energy. You are open but not exposed. You are aware but not intrusive. You hold back, not out of fear, but out of value. Your words are chosen. Your silence is meaningful. Seneca wrote, speech, if it's not thoughtfully considered, is dangerous. He knew that most people reveal their intentions too quickly. They show their hand. They rush to impress, to explain, to be understood. But the silently attractive person lets mystery breathe, not as a tactic, but as a truth. You don't need to rush to be known. You are known over time by the way you are. Realize how rare this is. We live in an era of oversharing, of performative vulnerability, of constant updates. But your restraint becomes sacred. You become the one who doesn't need to post every thought, explain every feeling, prove every point. Instead, your presence says, I see more than I say. I understand more than I show. I am watching, not waiting to speak, but simply witnessing. This creates space. And space is magnetic. Most people feel crowded in interactions. But with you, they feel room to breathe and room to wonder. What's behind that calm face? What do they know that they're not saying? That's the power of the second habit. Observation without exposure. Listening without broadcasting. Feeling without flaunting. When you practice this daily, in meetings, in friendships, in passing moments with strangers, you'll notice a shift. People respect your silence. They lean into your words. They feel seen but not judged. You give nothing extra, and yet you become unforgettable. Now, with composure as your root and deep observation as your practice, it's time to move into the third pillar of silent attraction, something more energetic than words and more influential than looks. Body economy. Most people use their bodies like noise machines, fidgeting, gesturing wildly, leaning too far in, shifting constantly to chase approval. But those who possess silent attraction move with purpose. Every gesture is earned. Every posture tells a story. Think of body economy as deliberate motion. It's the ability to express presence without performance. Like a lion that doesn't waste a single movement until necessary, your body becomes a signal of self-control, and people feel it long before they understand it. Seneca once wrote that, a great soul is strong in its calmness. That calmness isn't just internal, It shows in how you sit, how you walk, how you inhabit space. You're not shrinking to disappear or puffing up to dominate. You're simply there, fully, firmly, and without apology. Imagine entering a room. You don't scan nervously. You don't need to adjust your jacket or look at your phone to feel safe. You occupy your place grounded. Your breathing is slow. Your hands rest calmly. You don't move unless it adds meaning. That restraint? It speaks volumes. This is the third habit of silent magnetism, a mastery of physical presence. In Stoicism, the body was seen as a tool of virtue, not to be flaunted or worshipped, but directed with intention. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily to stand up straight, not straightened. That's posture not for performance, but for alignment. You're not posing. You're embodying clarity. Think of how little you trust someone who's too animated, constantly shifting, smiling too wide, speaking too fast. Their energy screams, "I need something from you." But the silently attractive person doesn't need to fill space. They already own it, through control of motion, not volume. Body economy means you let your body serve your calm, not your anxiety. You don't mirror every gesture. You don't nod excessively. You don't lean in as if trying to convince or beg for attention. You become an anchor. Others drift toward you because your energy is stable. It's the difference between a tree and a leaf in the wind. This also means mastering stillness in moments of discomfort. When someone disagrees with you, when there's tension in the air, when silence grows long, most rush to soften the moment, a chuckle, a twitch, a joke. But the silently attractive person holds the moment. They don't run from discomfort, they contain it. That power, contained but felt, becomes hypnotic. You don't need to act confident. You simply are. Your body doesn't betray neediness because your mind has already made peace with being misunderstood, with not being the center, with holding your own gravity. Here's a practical reflection. Begin noticing your body when you speak. Are your shoulders tight? Do your hands fly everywhere? Are your feet dancing under the table? Start training stillness in those moments. Not stiffness. Stillness. Relaxed awareness. In conversation, allow pauses. Don't fill gaps. Hold eye contact, just long enough to feel the connection, then release it. Sit back. Let others come forward. Silence paired with body economy becomes an invisible magnet pulling others in. Epictetus believed that freedom was found in mastering the self, and body language, being the surface of the self, is where that mastery becomes visible. When you move with intention, speak less with your hands, and pause before action, you communicate depth. People sense that there's more beneath the surface. They project their curiosity onto you, and that projection often becomes more powerful than anything you could say. It's not about being robotic. It's about being aligned. Stillness, posture, pacing, they all signal that you are not trying. And that, paradoxically, is what makes you deeply desirable in a world obsessed with trying too hard. So you've grounded yourself in composure. You've sharpened your perception through observation. You've embodied stillness with body economy. Now it's time to step into a different layer, not how you act, but how you don't react. The Stoic power of emotional immunity. There's a kind of quiet confidence that doesn't come from being tough, but from being unshakable. Not because you don't feel, but because you feel without folding. That is emotional immunity. The fourth habit of silent attraction. Emotional immunity isn't about suppressing. It's about sublimating. It's the inner choice moment by moment to not be ruled by emotional spikes. Anger, praise, criticism, rejection. These bounce off the shield of your calm. Not because you're numb, but because you've trained yourself to choose your state. Seneca taught, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." So ask yourself, how many of your emotional reactions are to actual events, and how many are to interpretations, assumptions, and imagined futures? The silently attractive person doesn't walk through life with armor made of ice. Their shield is made of understanding. They know where their triggers are. They know which words usually sting. They've felt the sting and studied it. So, when the moment comes, they don't flinch. You can feel this kind of person in a room. When someone raises their voice at them, they stay steady. When everyone laughs at a cruel joke, they don't join in. Not out of fear, but out of principle. When someone gives them a compliment, they say thank you. But it doesn't inflate them, because their sense of self is not on the auction block. That is emotional immunity. You no longer rely on the emotional weather around you to decide who you are. This is incredibly magnetic. Most people are so easily read, you can poke them and get a reaction, like tapping a touchscreen. But the one who doesn't react on cue becomes a mystery. And mystery draws attention, not for its own sake, but because people want to understand what they can't predict. Imagine this. You're in a heated conversation. Someone throws a personal insult. Instead of defending yourself, you pause. You let the silence absorb the charge. And then you respond, or not, from a place of poise. That moment alone creates a shift in power. You become unshakable, not aggressive, not passive, just immovable. Epictetus said that it's not things themselves that disturb us, but our judgments about them. So when someone gossips about you, criticizes your choices, mocks your silence, it's their noise, not your truth. You hear it, but you don't swallow it. You see the attack, but you don't wear it. This doesn't make you cold. It makes you free. Because your emotions are no longer hostages. They are allies. You still feel imber, but you respond. You don't react. People are drawn to this like gravity, especially in a world where overreaction is normalized. Outrage, drama, constant highs and lows. The one who walks through chaos without being absorbed by it becomes a refuge, a calm in the storm. You don't have to prove anything. You don't have to say, I'm fine. You are fine because you've done the inner work. You've sat with your anger until it dissolved. You've questioned your fears until they told you the truth. You've faced your shame and chosen to live anyway. And all of that, it glows beneath the surface. People can't name it, but they feel it. They feel the weight of someone who doesn't fall apart easily, someone who holds themselves upright, not out of pride, but out of peace. Here's how to practice it. Notice the next time you're triggered. Pause. Name it. Silently. Breathe into it. Ask yourself, is this worth losing my center? Will this matter tomorrow? If I react, what am I reinforcing? Strength or insecurity? You'll notice that just asking those questions changes everything. You stop being the puppet. You become the author. And the more you train that, the more magnetic your energy becomes, because people instinctively trust those who don't chase, don't beg, and don't collapse. So now you are composed. You observe. You move with purpose. You remain steady in emotion. But attraction isn't just about being still. It's also about the energy you do share. And that brings us to the next trait, often underestimated, yet impossible to ignore. A voice that feels like a choice. There's something unmistakable about someone who speaks like they mean it. Not loudly, not quickly, but with weight, with rhythm, with calm conviction. Their voice doesn't seek the room's permission. It occupies it. This is the fifth habit of silent attraction, a voice that feels like a choice, not a reaction. Most people speak to avoid silence, to fill space, to be heard. But the silently attractive person speaks to say something. Their words are measured, not rushed. Their tone is firm, not forced. They don't raise their voice to dominate. They lower it, because they understand that true influence whispers. It doesn't shout. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself to speak neither too much nor too little. It's a balancing act. But more importantly, it's about intention. You don't speak to impress. You speak to impact. And that difference is everything. When someone speaks with intention, you feel it in your bones. They're not trying to convince you. They're offering truth. Take it or leave it. And in that subtle detachment, their voice gains gravity. Think about the most magnetic people you've met. They didn't ramble, they didn't overshare, they didn't stutter apologies between sentences. Their voice was a channel, calm, clear, and direct. And when they paused, they let the pause exist. Because silence used well sharpens what comes next. This doesn't mean you have to have a deep voice or a polished accent. It means your voice is anchored in presence. You speak slower. You pause when needed. You remove filler words that dilute your meaning. And most importantly, you believe in what you're saying. If your voice sounds like a question, people treat it like one. If it sounds like a burden, people want to avoid it. But when it sounds like a choice, steady, deliberate, relaxed, people stop and listen. And here's the paradox. The less you try to be heard, the more clearly you're received. It's the same principle as composure and body economy. Less is more when the less is clean. Even when you say something simple like "I understand" or "that's not for me," the way you say it carries more weight than the words themselves. Because tone reveals intention, and people trust tone more than they trust content. Seneca advised, "Speech must be clear and slow enough for everyone to follow, not to dumb things down, but to honor your audience's attention." When you slow your speech, when you give each word space, people feel like you respect your own thoughts, and by extension theirs too. In conversation, this means you don't chase responses. You don't interrupt. You let silence work for you. You answer questions with intention, not impulse. You shift the rhythm from rush to resonance. Over time, this creates a unique presence. People associate your voice with stability, with thoughtfulness, with precision. You become the one they turn to when things are noisy, when emotions are high, when clarity is needed. To practice this, start by recording yourself speaking about something you care about. Listen to the tone. Are you rushing, filling every gap with or like, speeding past your own point? Then try again, slower, grounded, with more breath. Let each sentence land. In everyday conversation, begin to notice your rhythm. Lower your tone slightly. End your sentences cleanly. Let the final word hang without apology. Watch how people begin to lean in, not out. And remember, this is not performance. It's expression rooted in presence. Your voice becomes a mirror of your inner world. Calm inside, calm voice, scattered inside, scattered sound. The goal is not perfection, it's alignment. So when you speak, it doesn't feel like an escape. It feels like a choice, a deliberate offering from someone who doesn't need to say much to say everything. Now, having explored how presence flows through your voice, let's dive deeper into a form of attraction that rarely gets discussed, yet radiates through your very lifestyle: self-sufficiency as seduction. There's something profoundly magnetic about a person who doesn't need anything from you. Not your approval, not your attention, not your validation. They may enjoy your presence, but they don't require it. That's not detachment. That's self-sufficiency. And it's one of the most underrated forms of silent attraction. The truly self-sufficient person walks through life as if already full. They're not hunting for attention. They're not orbiting around others' moods. They're not chasing connection. They embody it. Their relationship with themselves is strong enough to carry them, and that security creates gravity. Seneca wrote, "The greatest blessings of mankind are within us and within our reach." The self-sufficient person knows this. They don't wait for the world to complete them. They complete themselves first, and then they give from overflow, not emptiness, and that paradoxically makes them irresistible. Think about it. Most social interaction is built on subtle forms of emotional trade. People smile to be liked. They talk to be heard. They compliment to be complimented back. But the self-sufficient person shows up without barter. They give without needing a return. And that makes people curious. Why are they so at peace alone? Why aren't they trying to prove themselves? Why do they seem content in silence, in solitude, in stillness? Because they've cultivated the rarest trait of all, inner wealth. Epictetus asked, "How can anyone be master of another who has mastered himself?" And that's exactly what self-sufficiency signals. You have your own internal economy, of attention, of self-worth, of meaning. And that economy doesn't inflate or collapse based on external opinion. This shows up in the smallest ways. You're not glued to your phone waiting for replies. You don't over-explain yourself. You don't perform to win affection. You don't apologize for your standards. You don't need a social event to feel alive, though you may enjoy it. You're not defined by who shows up, because you never abandoned yourself. This creates a profound dynamic. You become a source of stability. Others begin to sense that you are your own home, and everyone is drawn to people who feel like home. But this isn't about becoming a cold island. It's about being a full tree, not a clinging vine. You connect deeply, but you don't attach desperately. You care, but not at the cost of your self-respect. You love, but without begging to be loved back. Self-sufficiency also fuels standards. Because when you're no longer hungry for external affirmation, you get to choose more wisely. You don't tolerate rudeness for the sake of company. You don't pretend to laugh at things that offend your values. You walk away when necessary, without drama, without explanation. Just clarity. And the world feels that clarity. It's the aura of someone who can enjoy a conversation and end it gracefully, who can enter a room and not bend to its energy, who can love fiercely but walk away with dignity if their peace is compromised. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, "Very little is needed to make a happy life. It is all within yourself." He wasn't speaking poetically. He was reminding himself, and us, that the root of all magnetic power lies in not needing what the world insists you should crave. You don't have to impress. You don't have to chase. You don't have to prove. Instead, you wake up each day with a quiet ritual of strengthening your core, reading, writing, walking, reflecting, building. You create joy instead of seeking it. You build meaning instead of waiting for it to arrive. You invest in becoming a source, not a seeker. People can sense this even in silence. Your eyes aren't looking for rescue. Your energy doesn't beg. Your stillness doesn't come from boredom but from fullness. And that fullness is what makes others want to pour into you. So if you've ever felt overlooked because you don't perform, realize that you're playing a longer, deeper game. Your attraction isn't loud, it's earned. And it begins when your solitude no longer feels like absence, but presence. You've now grounded your attraction in composure, observation, control, tone, and sufficiency. It's time to lean into the next magnetic force, not one of silence, but of how you act when you finally choose to speak or move. The next habit is subtle dominance without intimidation. True dominance isn't about forcing others to submit. It isn't about loud voices or controlling energy. Real dominance, the kind that captivates without scaring, is subtle. It doesn't announce itself. It radiates. It's a kind of presence that signals without words. I don't need to lead, but if I must, I will. This is the 7th habit of silent attraction, subtle dominance without intimidation. Most people confuse dominance with aggression, but aggression is noisy. It disrupts. It commands through fear. Subtle dominance, on the other hand, commands through certainty. There is no need to overpower. You lead by example, not pressure. You guide with stillness, not force. Epictetus said, "First say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do." The silently dominant person has done exactly that. They know who they are, and so they don't need to advertise it. There is a quiet certainty in their movements, in their words, in their reactions. This kind of dominance is rare and deeply attractive because it's free from insecurity. You're not performing confidence, you're embodying it, and the people around you can feel it, not because you flex your status, but because you don't have to. Subtle dominance shows itself in moments of pressure. When others panic, you remain calm. When a decision must be made, you don't hesitate. When someone crosses a boundary, you respond directly, not emotionally. You don't react to power struggles. You dissolve them with composure. Think of the difference between a wave and a tide. A wave makes noise and crashes dramatically. A tide moves with silent, unstoppable force. The silently attractive person is the tide. Constant, certain, unrushed. You can practice this in small ways. When walking into a room, don't scan for approval. Let your posture speak. When someone disagrees with you, listen fully before responding. When you do speak, speak slowly and clearly. When faced with conflict, lower your voice instead of raising it. Show people through your energy that you do not fear tension. This isn't about being alpha. It's about being anchored. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." That's subtle dominance. You don't compete for control. You earn it through clarity, consistency, and calm execution. This presence changes the energy of a room. You won't always be the loudest, but people will notice when you enter, and they'll remember how they felt around you. Safe, seen, slightly challenged, deeply respected. And here's the key. Subtle dominance respects others. It doesn't diminish. It elevates. You're not trying to prove superiority. You're standing in your truth. And that truth is unshakable. Not because it's the loudest voice, Brico, but because it comes from a place of quiet alignment. Seneca advised, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more, that is poor." Dominance rooted in craving is fragile. But when you no longer crave status, when you lead because it's natural, not because it feeds your ego, you become the kind of presence others instinctively follow. In conversation, subtle dominance means knowing when to guide and when to hold back. It means asking more questions than giving answers. It means being okay with silence. It means choosing your words so carefully that people listen the first time. You're not afraid to disagree, but you don't need to crush. You're not afraid to challenge, but you don't need to humiliate. You're not afraid to stand alone, because you've stood with yourself in silence for long enough to not fear solitude. This kind of power is rare. It's quiet, but it draws respect. And it builds relationships where people feel both safe and challenged, a balance that few can maintain. So what happens when you combine composure, observation, physical presence, emotional immunity, a deliberate voice, self-sufficiency, and subtle dominance? You begin to radiate an energy that invites without chasing. You lead without pulling. You attract without asking. Now comes the final chapter, the hidden key that binds all these habits into one coherent force. Emotional generosity without need. There is a final layer to silent attraction. It's not stoic detachment, it's not cold indifference. It's warmth, but without hooks. Kindness, but without performance. It's the art of giving emotionally, without needing anything back. And it's perhaps the most disarming form of power. This is the eighth and final habit of silently magnetic people. Emotional generosity without need. Most people give affection like a contract. Smile to be smiled at. Compliment to be complimented. Ask about your day so you'll ask about theirs. Their warmth is wired with expectations. And you can feel the weight of that trade. But the silently attractive person gives from a place of fullness. Their presence is an offering, not a demand. They listen without needing to be interesting. They support without keeping score. They see without trying to be seen. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." And, in that same vein, the most unexpected rebellion in a cynical world is to be kind, quietly, freely, unconditionally. But here's the nuance. Emotional generosity doesn't mean being available to everyone. It doesn't mean overextending or sacrificing boundaries. It means choosing carefully where to pour your energy, and then pouring it fully, with no secret thirst for reciprocation. This trait is rare because we've been trained to equate giving with leverage. We give compliments to get closer. We offer help to feel valuable. But emotional generosity that expects nothing is lightning in a bottle. People can't fake it, and they never forget it when they feel it. It might be a calm smile during someone's Rant. A word of encouragement when no one's watching. A moment of true presence when everyone else is distracted. These things don't demand attention, but they create connection that lingers long after the moment ends. Epictetus reminded us, don't explain your philosophy, embody it. That's what this habit is. You don't say you're kind, you don't try to appear supportive, you simply are. And that integrity is magnetic in a way no charm can replicate. This also means you're generous with your attention. You truly listen, not just to respond, but to witness. And in a world full of interrupted thoughts and fragmented, presence being fully seen is a gift people crave. And remember, but the key here is detachment from outcome. You don't give to be liked. You give because that's who you've chosen to become. Your self-sufficiency protects you from need. Your composure keeps your heart steady. Your body economy ensures your actions are grounded. And your generosity, when it flows from this internal alignment, becomes a force of quiet attraction. It's the warmth of a fire that doesn't need to chase anyone to be felt. People gather because it gives off heat, not because it asks for applause. This kind of emotional generosity is subtle. It isn't grand gestures. It's small consistencies. Thoughtfulness without spectacle. Attention without agenda. Kindness without compensation. You might wonder, in a world so transactional, doesn't this make you vulnerable? Yes, but only in the best way. Vulnerability, when rooted in strength, is what separates true depth from performance. You're not emotionally generous because you're weak. You're generous because you're full, because you can be, because you've done the inner work to know that giving doesn't empty you. It expands you. This makes your presence unforgettable, not because you tried to be memorable, but because people will always remember how you made them feel, free, seen, calm, accepted. And when you can do that, when your presence doesn't demand but offers, you become rare. So here you are. The full architecture of silent attraction has taken form. You've grounded yourself in composure. You've sharpened your perception through observation. You've mastered your physical presence through body economy. You've learned to feel without flinching through emotional immunity. You've spoken with clarity through a voice of intention. You've walked alone with self-sufficiency. You've stood tall through subtle dominance. And now, you've opened your heart, wisely, calmly, and through emotional generosity, not to be liked, not to be admired, but because it's who you are when the noise fades. This is silent attraction, not a game, not a script, a practice. In a world of volume, you've chosen depth. In a world of masks, you've chosen essence. In a world of clamor, you've become still, and in that stillness irresistible.